So this story is about me stealing £4,000 from my old place of employment. It's obviously a story that is filled with tons of shame. It's hard for me to talk about, but it was one of the many things that kind of helped me turn my life around from being alcoholic, waste of space, degenerate, criminal, basically. So I thought it'd be worth sharing, and perhaps it'll help somebody. So, back to the beginning. I started working for this company back in 1996, and I worked there for 24 years before I left during the lockdowns. And it kind of started, what happened was, I used to know the guy who owned the company. Actually, it was two brothers who owned the company, but there's one guy, one of them ran it much more than the other. And there was a crowd of us used to play golf on a Sunday, and he was in that crowd, I was in that crowd. And he'd got a problem with his company, and he needed somebody to come in and do a certain type of job that was very numbers orientated, and I'm like really good with numbers. And I'd been working for myself before that, but because I was always drinking, I just like went out and made money and then just drank it and pissed it up the wall, basically. So it was kind of the first job where it looked like I could go into a job, get paid a fair wage. It actually wasn't that good to start with, but it was promising, and get back into a structure. So that's why I took the job. It took me a long time to take the job. This guy was offering it me for quite a while. People who, like, so how old was I then? 20, 25. People around me who were much more mature than me and sober, etc., were saying, you should do this. You need the structure and the discipline to be good for you. So in the end, I took the job, and it was kind of okay. But what happened was the guy who ran the company, we were kind of mates, but more acquaintances in the same circle. He started, when we used to go around different golf courses on Sundays and play, and there was about 16 of us, and he started paying for he paid for my golf one Sunday. And I was like, oh, nice one, mate. So the next week I went to pay, and he goes, no, it's all right, I got it. And he sort of paid 2 or 3 times, and I was like, what's going on here? This is like really weird. So I kind of took him to one side and said, bear in mind I was working for him by now. I took him to one side and sort of said, this is really weird, Dave. Like, we're all grown men here, and you're paying for my golf in front of other people. It just, I don't know. It looks really weird. Like, I do really appreciate it, but I don't understand. And he was like, oh, fair enough. I'll make sure nobody sees. And I was kind of confused, and like, then it carried on happening, and I was like, Dave, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't really understand what's going on. You're paying for my golf. Other people knowing that you're paying for my golf, it's kind of embarrassing. He wouldn't let me pay back for him to play golf. And then what happened was he started giving me the money when we got there in the car park or whatever, or if I'd paid, he'd give it me afterwards. So we're talking like probably about 30 quid at the time. So this was like every week, pretty well every week. And it was kind of really weird, and I didn't know what to make of it. I actually asked somebody about it, and they were like, well, it's just like a fatherly gesture, because he hadn't got any sons. He's got 2 daughters, but he hadn't got any sons. And they were like, well, it's just like a fatherly gesture kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, but it's like, my problem was I felt embarrassed that other people would see it happen. But then it kind of became a bit of a norm, and it became more that he'd give me the money. So roll on maybe a year of that, something like that, I don't know. And one of the management guys in the company, so basically there was 3 directors, then there was 2 kind of managers. I don't know where I've fitted into all this. And then there was so it's a timber merchants or a builder's merchants. And then there was the lad sort of either working in the yard or on the counter and stuff like that. So I don't really know where I fitted into that. I certainly wasn't above the 2 managers. They were like probably paid double me at the time, but I was treated more on their sort of level. And one of them, I was starting to get to know him a little bit. He was a really good laugh, but he was a big drinker. So we got that connection for sure. And there'd been like times where a few of us had gone for a drink after work, and him and I kind of bonded and chatted about stuff. And what happened was we went out. So he was a bachelor boy at the time. I was a bachelor boy at the time. And he came over to where I live. And we went out on the lash one night, and he kicked over at my house and then drove us both into work the next morning. And when we went out that night, we didn't get smashed because both of us could drink so much, but we drank a lot. So we were obviously, the old talk was going. And I found out so much about that company on that night. It kind of blew me away. So it turned out that was when I learned that he was getting like 50 quid every Friday night from the gaffer. The other manager was getting like 50 quid every Friday night from the gaffer. And then the three gaffers themselves, the three directors, I mean, there was the one guy who ran the company basically and two directors, but they were shareholders. They were in even more cash every week that wasn't going through the books. So that was the first time I learned about that. And I remembered that this guy, H.E., that I went out drinking with, and the other manager, they used to call it the monkey. So they'd like, that was like their code word for it. Have you had your monkey this week and stuff like that? And what was really interesting about it is that as we talked about it, I kind of learned that it wasn't related to how much work you'd done or anything like that. Because sometimes you'd get a bit less, sometimes you'd get bit more, sometimes you wouldn't even get it. And it was, it was like working out whether it was because they hadn't taken much cash this week, so it's a timber merchant, so it's cash rich industry, because timber would come in as a big, almost like a log, but like a big long piece of timber, big wide, like 12-inch by 4-inch piece of timber, but that's not how it got sold out. So if you can imagine, like, I don't know, in a sweet shop, you'd buy 20 Mars bars and you'd sell 20 Mars bars. So it's really easy to account for. But in the timber merchants, you'd buy in a 6 metre length of 12-inch by 4-inch, but it would go out as some little beadings for windows, tiny little things, some big things. So it's impossible. And then as it goes through the machine, the saw turns a load of it into sawdust, some of which is sold, some of which is given away for animal bedding and stuff like that. So as you can imagine, it's impossible to trace what goes in versus goes out. So it becomes a cash-rich industry. So what we worked out, or what I've kind of learned then, I think, and H.E. already knew it, was that how much you got, or whether you got your monkey on a Friday night, was actually related to how much brown nosing you'd done. How much you had done what the gaffer told you, hoed the line, done everything he'd said, and basically made him look special. And that was like a big learning point for me that night, because I learned a lot about the gaffer that day and mine and his relationship. So I guess the next bit to explain is what happened with my job role there. So I was brought in to help them with what's called BS 5750 back in those days. It's kind of like procedures and stuff like that. Because they supplied some big companies like Rover at the time, Jaguar Land Rover. They weren't called that then, but Land Rover and Jaguar and Rover. And they had to start coming into line with all these quality assurance type things. And as a little family business, they didn't really know what to do. And I did know some of that, so I helped them do that. I kind of nailed that really quickly. So then it was like, oh, what are you going to do? What else can I move into? And I started doing quite a lot of the accounts in the company, because that was easy for me. Selling timber wasn't going to be the thing for me. I did actually end up setting up my own department in the company, selling all sorts of weird things that are nothing to do with timber per se, but they are to do with maintenance. So that's another story really, and that's where part of my entrepreneurial instinct came in, because I had my own department in the business and was actually making them a load of money in something that they would never expected to. But something the gaffer did ask me to start looking into was the security in the place. In fact, this was something he'd already said before I started there, was that there's a lot of theft going on, a lot of stuff going missing, and it was costing the company money. Remember, this is before I knew that they were taking money out of the company left, right and centre anyway, that if it had gone through the company, would make the company worth more, would have gone to the tax. But so my desk was positioned right in front of a window that looked out onto the main gates of the yard, so that I could actually see a bit more of what was coming in and going out. And then I had regular access to be able to look at what the lads had booked out. So it wasn't like people... It was accounts. It was like trade accounts. So it wasn't like people were paying for stuff as they had it. They were like booking it out, signing for it, and then it'd get charged by invoice, and then they'd pay at the end of the month after, that sort of thing. So trade type stuff rather than retail. So what happened was, very quickly, I started to get to know who was the dodgy customers, who were the members of staff that were involved in it. Very quickly. It was not very difficult to see, because they sort of would keep themselves to themselves. I actually wonder if some of my habits of being an addict and being able to like hide things and not let people see what I was up to actually made it easy for me to spot in other people. But anyway, I started to see what was going on, see who the customers were, and it was rife. Like that company would have made so much money through the books if the gaffers had been putting money through the books and the staff had been putting through the books that they were robbing. But anyway, what happened was I started catching these guys and speaking to the gaffer and saying, like, you know, there's this going on here. They're taking this. I can see them taking this. How are we going to go about this? Do you want to get the police involved? Do you want to like prove it and give written warnings and discipline them? Are you going to do it? Do you want me to do it? And what happened was there was this like really grey area, but there was kind of like, yeah, go ahead. You approach them, and then I'll do them the written warnings or sack them, and then we'll get the police involved if we have to. And all that happened from that was that every time one of these situations would come up, I would approach the situation like, you know, I can see what you're doing here, or you've just taken that and you haven't booked it out. And every time the boss would never back me up. So he would actually say, oh, he's probably forgotten to book it out, just book it out. Or, oh, he's probably going to pay for it next time. So there's always an excuse for the member of staff, always an excuse for the customer. And all that happened was over a period of a few years, I was just being made to look like a complete idiot. And it was horrendous because what happened, I mean, this was really bad. I was threatened to have my house burned down. And I actually had a guy who worked at the company lower down that I was close to and would give me a bit of feedback about what was going on. And he was like, those customers there, they know that you're after them. And they're going to turn it around your house and they're just going to baseball bat you and they're going to burn your house down, all this sort of stuff. And if you think like some of these guys, they're connected, like gang type people involved in drugs, like that's the sort of people. Or no, that's not the sort of people, but some of our customers were like that. And it was kind of frightening. And although I could look after myself in a one-to-one fight because of my martial arts, there's nothing you can do about people like that. You know, if somebody's on a warpath and there's more than one of them and stuff like that, and they're the sort of people who are willing to burn houses down, smash cars up and stuff like that, then you're no match for them. There's nothing you can do about that. So it was really horrible, actually, because it turned into this situation where I started to hate the boss. All the lads in the yard hated me, although there were guys that were there that weren't on the rob. But it was just turning into this horrible situation. I'm not sure if frightening was the right words because I was a single guy at the time. But certainly then when I settled down and had kids, you know, this isn't happening. I'm not risking this for no backup. So it wasn't even worth it. It wasn't even worth doing it. And I'm not proud of this, but in the end, it became this thing where I would say to the lads, look, I actually started becoming friends with the lads because I was like, look, I was asked to do this when I came here. I've just been doing my job. You can probably understand that I'm doing my job. Hopefully you can understand that I'm doing my job and I'm not getting backed up in doing my job. He obviously doesn't bother about the money really and the stuff being taken. So go ahead, have at it. I am not getting involved. But if you could just not do it in front of me so he can't sack me for not doing my job, although that would have been a tough one, then have at it. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just going to turn a blind eye, which I'm not proud of, but, you know, truth be told, I wasn't getting backed up. It was a horrendous situation to be in. And this was once my daughter had been born and I was like, I can't have this hanging over my head where people are threatening to come around and burn my house down and stuff like that. So that was when I moved away from doing that security type work or that monitoring the stealing type work in that company. The next part of the story is how it moved from me getting involved with the stealing with the lads. So I turned a blind eye to it all. And what happened was the lads kept saying to me, oh, you know, because there were certain little departments that I ran that we did have some cash sale customers, so people could come in off the streets that wanted some stuff for their DIY projects and stuff like that, or bigger. And we did have some cash, and I looked after all of that for years and years. And they were like, oh, you know, what goes through there can be really easy, because that's where they would make some of their money as well. People come in and pay cash for stuff and they just wouldn't put it through the books, and I would see that. And they were like, oh, don't say anything, we'll split it with you and stuff like this. So I had offers of this cash coming my way. But what started happening was, because I knew the cash that I used to get on a Friday night related to how much brown nosing you'd done with the boss, really. What happened was, when he started making me look an idiot in front of the lads, when I was catching them stealing, I mean, the amount of times I caught even the staff stealing for themselves, and he just said to them, they'd taken it home in their car, and he said to them, oh, you forgot to book that out the other day, that stuff you had. Can you just make sure you book it out and give us the money? It was horrendous. Made me look a right tit. But what happened was, the lads were asking me, and the gaffer and I became nasty with each other. And as I became more mates with the lads who worked there, they would come to me for stuff. So like, I started running all the holiday, I started running all the sick leave and the hours and stuff like that. And they would start coming to me as if I was the boss of the company and dealing with that. And I would kind of became like a bit of a father figure to them. I don't know if that's fair, but a leader type figure to them. And they would come to me for stuff. They always wanted help. They would come into my office for a chat and stuff like that. And I actually started having a really good relationship with most of the lads there. And the gaffer hated it. And what happened was, I just stopped getting the cash on the Friday night. And it came to this position where I found myself sort of in this weird position in the middle, where I knew the people at the top were scraping money off creaming money off the top, taking the cream, where they were taking all this cash for the directors and then the two other managers. Actually, unfortunately, one of those managers, the guy I went out drinking with, he passed away. He actually got sacked in the end for turning up drunk and having too much time off. He was great at his job. He was actually a really nice guy, but he was like me. He was just, we were both so alcohol dependent that it just affected a lot of things. But yeah, so he'd gone. But these people at the top getting their 50, 60 quid a week, well, the gaffers were probably having 100 more every single week. And then the lads who worked in the yard, they were creaming as well, and they were probably making as much as well every week. Like, the amount of money that was going out of that place was just outrageous. And I was getting none of it. And then, because the boss and I we were always like this now. I was the only person in that company who really stood up to him. He's a real bully, narcissist type. And actually, it was kind of good for me that I stopped getting the money, because there was not... I wasn't going to brown those. I'm just not that type of person. I hate people who use things like money to get people to... They manipulate people by using money or love or whatever like that. I can't stand it. So it was kind of good for me in a way. But I had this thing where everyone's like creaming money off the top. And I was like, even to the point where I was like, well, my kids are missing out here because of mine and his relationship. And I got this thing where the lads in the yard, certain ones of them were like, because you run all the cash, if you can help us with this, you can have some as well. And we'll do it, but we'll give some to you. And in the end, after years of persuading, I did it. And it's kind of like I have so much shame around it. And it's something I ended up having to tell my family about, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it also brought about a moment that was one of those kicks in the teeth that helped me turn things around. So I haven't got completely negative feelings about it, but very shame-based. So I started doing that with them, but it was really weird. And I don't even know if I can put this across so that you'd understand it, but I kind of was okay with getting caught, because I knew he couldn't do anything about it, because I had all this masses of evidence of him taking cash and, evading tax. Evading, the one that is illegal. I'd started to gather evidence of that. And I'd got so much evidence of that I knew that when I got caught, I could just go, what exactly are you going to do about it when I've got all this, like photos, videos, audio recordings, paperwork, all this stuff of you doing that. So I kind of there was a part of me that kind of wanted to get caught so that I could just go, yeah, what are you going to do about it? You stopped giving me the monkey. So I just took it another way. But of course, I'd gone into this world of crime, which was like a huge mistake. So yeah, that went on for I think a couple of years. And what eventually happened was, I remember we were talking in the office where the management were, and I think two of the directors worked in there. And I was like, even being blatant about it. Well, I was like, well, he thinks he's clever, like stopping giving me cash while you like are getting it, but I'll just get it otherwise, same as everyone else does and stuff like that. So I was even talking about it, but I talked about it in front of his brother. And his brother was a very quiet guy, much nicer guy, very placid. Everyone liked him. I'm sure that the actual guy around the company hated the fact that his brother was well, he's very popular, and he was totally unpopular. So that they had this kind of weird relationship, but they were brothers, and they kind of got on, but argued a lot. They were seen kicking each other's shins a few times, but I even spoke about it in front of him, and then I noticed that they were starting to catch on, because some of the bookwork that we were kind of manipulating was disappearing out of the pile that was kind of not hidden, but stored away. But I was often putting stuff into these piles at every cash book that was finished. And I was like, oh, something's going on here. So, you know, on a day when the gaffer wasn't there, I went into his office to see if I could see what was going on. And his drawers were locked. And his drawers were never, well, actually, it was the drawers on the other desk. They were locked. And they'd never been locked because there was stuff in there that other people needed. So I knew that they were trying to work out what was going on, probably in like November, and it all came to a head in the January. And it was kind of funny to me. And I wanted to get out of this company. I hated working for these people. I actually really enjoyed my job, and I'd got my own little department, but I hated working for these people, and it was not good for my mental health. Working for this guy was a complete narcissist bully. Like, he controlled everyone in that place, including his brother, including the other director. Very, very manipulative guy, like a Olympic standard narcissist. And I was probably the one person that he hadn't got much hold of, in the respect of using money to make sure that they conform to his ways. But in a way, he had got a hold of me, because I'd gone and done these things almost to spite him, well, purely to spite him, maybe a bit of jealousy for the money or whatever. But, you know, he had got me as well, but just in a different way. And I was trying to get myself ready to get out of the company. So I was getting my personal trainer qualification. I'd got other business interests that I was starting to build up. I'd got into the property market to become a landlord. So I was letting some properties out by them. So I was building up to getting out. And then it came to the point, and I was just waiting for him to have the balls to actually say something to me, because he was actually a very weak character. Although he was a bully, he was all underhanded. He was a very weak character. And it was like, when is he actually gonna confront me with this? So it happened when we went back in after Christmas. So it was January 2013. We went back in, and I was sitting at my desk, and he just came over my shoulder with a cash sheet that I'd done from that December. Just put it over my shoulder, and he goes, oh, Chris, that figure there just doesn't seem to add up. Can you have a look at it for us? So, and it was kind of like, it was so obvious to me that was the figure sort of thing. So I was like, oh, here we go, he's ready. So I thought, what's the best thing I can do here? Do I just walk out or what? And I was so everything came up then. So although I'd been waiting for this for a while, it sort of, suddenly it was on. It was game on. How's he going to play this? We're going into a proper battle now. Like, him and I had some battles over the time I worked there. I worked there 24 years. It was game on. So this is back in 2013. Remember, I was drinking like 160 plus units of alcohol a week back then as well. So he put this cash sheet, and he said, oh, there's something weird about this figure. We've been looking at it. Can you have a look at it? Sort of thing. He turned on his heel and walked out. And I thought, oh, that's so typical of him. He's like, have the sit down and have the full on chat about it. He's like, but I'm off. So I was like, oh, he hated doing that. He like really struggled to do that. So I thought, I'm just gonna sit here and leave it and just carry on as if nothing's happened, and make him have to do it again. And he left it, and he didn't say anything until the next day. And what I knew was that his daughter hated me, and she worked there, and she was onto him. Come on, what are you going to do? Come on, take him out, sack him, and all this sort of stuff. And what was really stupid is their office was next to mine, and I could hear nearly everything they said, all this stuff. Anyway, the next day he came in and he said, oh, did you have a chance to look at that thing? And he walked out again. So then I was like, you know, I got fired up. I was like, let's go into battle. So I was just like, I'm just going to leave. Like, this is the best thing that can happen for me is I'm just going to leave. So I just walked into his office when he was on his own. And I went, yeah, I've been creaming off the company for a couple of years, whatever it was. I'll pay you back. I'm going. I'm sorry. And it was really weird because my plan had been to just throw it back in his face and go, what are you going to do about it? And probably pay him back. Well, I would have definitely paid him back, paid the company back. But when it came to it, I was like, I'm just going to go. This is like screwed me up so bad. What to do this thing, it kind of sobered me up a bit. And I was like, I'm just going to go. So I told him I would leave. I told him I would pay him back. And I thought, I'm going to take him down, but I'm going to do it from outside the company. I am going to take him down. I'm going to go to the HR, show them everything that he's been doing, and I'm going to take him down because he has taken me down. He has made me go to this level, which isn't fair. He didn't make me go to that level. My problems, my issues, they had made me go to that level. But anyway, and he said that he didn't want me to leave. He was like, no, I don't want you to leave. So that was kind of confusing. And I thought, oh, does he know that the day that this comes to pass is the day that I do take him down? Because I used to say this out loud. I used to say, he can never do anything because he's such a crook himself. And so I don't know whether he said to me to stay because of the amount of money I made the company, or because he was like, oh, if Chris goes, this could be the time that he takes me down, or whether he was just worried that loads of things would come to light. I don't really know. And he asked me to stay. And then I was like, oh, and my own thought in my head was like, well, right, if I do leave now, I need to start building my income up really quickly. So I'd got some things going in the pipeline, preparing myself to leave, but I wasn't quite ready. So I was like, I said, I need to think about it. I wanted to speak to a couple of people. And I spoke to my best mate, Andy, at the time. And I had a chat with him, told him what had happened. And he was kind of like, Chris, that job does pay you well. So I was on a decent wage by now. It gives you security. I've got 2 kids by then. And he was like, I think you should stay and get yourself in a position to leave, not just walk out now. And he was right. And then, so I was chatting to him and I was like, I feel like I should tell my wife. I feel like I should tell my family and like be open about it. And my mate, he's like such a good mate. This guy, Andy, has been to me for forever. He's like been more of a father figure than probably anyone to me over my life. And he's like a couple of years older than me, but he's just always been so mature, got his head on straight. And of course, my head's always been on sideways. Yeah, real great friend that I'll love forever. And he was like, I don't think you need to tell everyone. What good is it going to be to tell everyone what's happened? You know, what might it do to your marriage, stuff like that. Like, these things happen. Just fix it now and be done with it. And it took me some time to be sure that that was the right thing to do. And what happened was I went into the boss and I said, look, okay, I'm thinking of staying, but I'm staying on this one proviso. And that is that I asked him who knew about it. And he said it was him, the 2 directors and me. And that was all that knew about it. And I said to him, okay, if it stays there, then I'm happy to stay. I will stay. As long as it stays there, I will pay the company back the money and water under the bridge. I said, but if it goes anywhere else, then that's it. And he was like, no, I don't want anyone else to know about it anyway. Like, it's not good. And it's not good for the company to have this sort of thing going on. So he promised me confidentiality, which probably should be the case anyway. So on those grounds, I decided to stay and carry on trying to build up my external side hustle sort of thing in order to get ready to leave. So this bit is where the straw that broke the camel's back. So roll on about a year, and one of the lads who worked there in the yard, well, actually worked on the counter, so he was like in sales. I was pretty good mates with him by now, and we'd been out drinking and stuff like that a few times. Had some good times together. Used to chat at work loads. I'd helped him a lot with his mental health, actually, funnily enough. And one Monday I went in and he goes, Chris, I need to have a chat with you about something. I was like, what's that, mate? And he wasn't involved in the stealing thing that had gone on before with me. And he said on Saturday, he'd been in work. So we used to work alternate Saturdays. On Saturday, he'd been in at work and he'd heard the boss's daughter and another member of staff sitting in an office talking about me and saying about how I should have been sacked when I got caught stealing and stuff like this. And he was just like, I want you to know that they're talking about this with the door not shut in the office, and that I heard it and that anyone else could have heard it. And I was like, I didn't even know that these people knew about it, because the gaffer had told me it was just between the 3 directors and me. He didn't want it going anywhere else. And now suddenly somebody who worked on the counter in the shop knew about it. So this totally changed things for me, because I hadn't told anyone about this. I think I might have told one of my mates other than Andy, who'd sort of helped me. But I hadn't told anyone about this. Andy and I had come to this sort of, I trusted him implicitly. I took so much of that man's advice on board because I was such a bum. And he seemed so level-headed and mature. And I hadn't told anyone about this. And suddenly I thought, this is going to get out, and I haven't told them. So I decided instantly that this was the time for me to tell my wife about it, to tell my mum about it, and just anyone I thought it would affect personally, finding out about it and finding out about it for someone else. So there was this sudden massive change, and I confronted the gaffer. I was like, what's going on here? Like, I've heard about your daughter and the lad, this lad had come in on management, heard about them talking about it, and now someone in the yard knows about it. And he was like, I never told you that I wouldn't tell anyone. I was like, you have got to be joking. That conversation we had was, I will only stay if that. And I said, and to be honest, I believe that it should be confidential anyway. And he was like, well, I never said that, and he was like really backing off, really struggling. And so that was the day. On that day, I was like, I am going to take you down. And I had to sit down with my wife and explain it to her. I sat down with my mum and my auntie and explained it to them. And it was kind of like, there was a little bit of relief to that, I got to be honest, but it was like really hard. And, there's parts of the story where when I tell them, I always feel like I'm making excuses. But it was kind of, when I was telling them those bits, I always feel like I'm making excuses. Just tell people that you stole the money. But there was all these mitigating circumstances that kind of encouraged me to do it, but I should never have done it. But anyway, so I told my wife, told my mum, told my auntie, who is best mates with my mum, and kind of got all that off my chest quite a bit. But it's something, that I still have to live with. The shame of it, I still have to live with. And then that was the point where I decided, right, I've got to get out of here quick, and I'm going to take him down. Now, the thing was, I'd kind of got time on my side. I could take him down at any time. So I was like, right, I just need to finalise a few things I'm doing to sort out my income when I leave. So I could sort of take a bit of time over that. And what happened was, as I gradually mellowed out towards him, like, we still hated each other. But as I mellowed out, I'd started building up. I'd taken over somebody's martial arts school, which is another crazy story I'll tell you about another time, because I wasn't even high up in that martial art. But circumstances with the instructor or the owner of the school becoming ill and stuff like that, they just needed somebody to run it. So I kind of ended up jumping in. So I'd got some income there. I'd got my property thing. And the other thing, and I'd got another thing on the side going. But what was happening was, I was starting to tell my customers, remember I'd got my own little department in this business. I was starting to tell my customers that I was going to be leaving soon. And they were all like, what? How the hell are we going to buy this stuff? Because nobody else in the company cared about the stuff I sold. They just wanted to sell timber. They just wanted to make cash for themselves, it appeared, most of them. And they were all like, when you go, will you carry on looking after us? And I was like, wow, that's like really interesting. I suppose it was kind of obvious, really, because they came to that company because of the service I gave them. So what happened then was, I actually went to the gaffer and said, look, I'm going to be leaving soon. And I'm telling you, all my clients want me to look after them when I go. I said, so if you want, we could try and do this in some sort of amicable way where I could still look after them and get paid by you, but I'm going, so you can pay me like a commission, or I can take them I can go and take them and you can do the paperwork or whatever and I'll give you a commission. And I gave him these options, which I thought seemed like a brilliant idea. And I'd spoken to other people about, and I think I gave him 3 options, 3 ways of going about it. And do you want to talk about it? Now, the first thing I heard was from one of the other directors was that, oh, Dave's interested in that, you know, and he wants to go ahead with one of them. We're just talking about which ones. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, you know. And I'd kind of started to get into my head that if I took him to the cleaners with the HMRC, with the tax, that friends of mine that worked there were in danger of losing their jobs. And that was obviously a problem for me. I didn't want that to happen. So I started to back off on the idea of taking him down. It was more of a tool I could wield, or it was something in my head. But I did want to take him down. And then what happened was the same guy who'd heard the staff talking, or his daughter talking with one of the management team about what I'd done back in 2012, said he heard her telling him, don't you dare let him get away with that. Don't you bow down to what he wants to do. Just let him go. Tell him we'll go alone. And then I got an email from the boss, whose office is next door to me, remember, telling me, you know, I've read all your offers through, but we're not interested. We're going to carry on serving them as we do now. It was like, I said to one of the directors that I was good mates with, not his brother, the other one. I was like, oh, he's not interested in that. And he was like, what? And I said, yeah, he's just said we're going to carry on serving them. And by then, he was ready to leave anyway, and he did leave. He actually left before me. He was like, Chris, I don't know what's going on in there. He got similar sort of issues to me going on, really, where he was just like pushed out as the younger family started coming in. And it was like, oh, okay, he doesn't want to hear us. That's actually fine. But I would like walk around saying things like, well, he's going to regret that and he's going to regret that. And whether he thought that meant that I just was going to take loads of business away, loads of their turnover, or whether he got the inkling that I was going to go to the HMRC. But he was totally controlled by his family, like his wife and daughter just like used to push him around so bad. So anyway, then it was just a case of getting out of there and taking these customers with me and doing my other stuff as well. So I was like really looking forward to this life I have now, where I run like 3 different businesses. So I do my weight loss coaching, I got my property, and I'm still serving some of those clients. And that's like 2020, so 4 years later, 4 full years later. And then what happened, so the thing that actually got me out of there was I got totally walked all over when the lockdown came. So there's a few weird things when the lockdown came. The one was how he just like told all the staff, go home, don't know if you're going to get paid, you have to wait and hear if the government's going to pay you, which was totally wrong way of going about it. He didn't understand furlough, he hadn't read about it. I understood it. I said to the lads, don't worry. He can't do that. He can send you home, but he has to pay you and he has to get it back from the government. But anyway, because they were worried that they just weren't going to get any money. And he basically sent us all home, which was interesting because he didn't have to, because we were in the construction trade and the construction and hardware stores could stay open. But he took the easy option of taking the government money. So in my opinion, that was a time when that company could have really flourished. In fact, the day we shut down, we made a fortune because all the other big places shut down, like the Bill Bases, Travis Perkins, Jewson's, all that shut down that day because they didn't know what to do. They reopened quite soon after. And I got there, everyone was standing outside because he'd said, oh, we're going to shut down. And I went inside and said, this is going to be one of your biggest opportunities to make a shed load of money and get some of your old customers back that have gone to these customers. And that day was probably the busiest day we've ever had there. We made a fortune that day. But that was it. He didn't have business sense like that. He was a brilliant salesman, but he didn't have business sense like that. But then he shut down the next day. And what happened was, put us all on the 80%, which the government paid us, obviously. Well, he paid us and then he had to claim it back off the government. He took that easy option. So basically, in my opinion, all the money that company got from the government was illegal because we could have stayed open. We could have supplied the construction industry and we wouldn't have had to have any government money. But he took all of it. He took the easy option, probably pushed by his daughter, who was the laziest person I've ever worked with. So what happened then was we were all sent home. And my clients, who were like maintaining ambulance stations, NHS buildings, police stations, places, all these sorts of places, council buildings, they were desperate for materials still and couldn't get them. And they were coming on to me all the time, like, what can we do? And I was like, I don't know, we're still closed. But then he gradually started opening up. And what he did was he just pulled in the minimum amount of people so that he could just pay minimum and still get the rest of us paid by the government. And he started asking me to look after my people from home, but still get paid by the government. He never put this in an email, unfortunately. Actually, that's not true. I've got emails where he said, oh, can you quote this and can you quote that? So that was illegal. You weren't allowed to do that. So there was a little bit of that going on, a little bit of quoting my customers still going on. But my customers were up in arms. They were like disgusted that, and I was like, he's not letting me back in. There's money to be made. There's customers that need looking after. The place is back open, but he's not letting me back in. He's keeping me at home on 80%, and the government is paying me. And to me, that was illegal. And then gradually the staff started going back in, and I was the last member of staff back in, right? And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I think I'm going to just go in. If I go in there and there's loads of work for me to do and it hasn't been done, because basically, to claim that 80%, he was saying that I wasn't needed. It wasn't needed for me to go back in. So that meant other people should be doing my job, right? Well, I went back in that day, and I'm not kidding you, the paperwork on my desk was literally like this. It was just stacked high and wide, and nothing had been done with any of the processing, all the cash sales that came through, any of my customers. I used to check all the invoices before they went out to the customers, because the way that the timber used to get machined, it's very hard to work out prices of different things, but because I'm not good at maths, I was really good at that. None of it had been done. So it's just this masses of paperwork. And I looked at it and I was like, it's going to take me 2 or 3 weeks just to get this pile down and look after the stuff that would still be coming in. And I went into him and I was like, what on earth is going on here? You've kept me at home. I should have been in here doing this. There was work for me to do. It needed doing. And he was like, oh, you'll be all right. Perhaps we can help you with it, sort of thing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I was like, where's your daughter? And he says, oh, she's working from home. I goes, doing what? There's nothing that she can do at home. It was just absolutely insane. So she was getting paid a full amount. She was back in, but working from home. It was just so unfair. And that was when I said to him, this ain't on, Dave. You're just taking a mickey out of me. You're bullying me. I've been at home. You've got me all this work. And I decided to go. And that formed a constructive dismissal case, which actually I'm not supposed to talk about. But I walked out that day, took him to, went through, what's it called? Is it ACAS or something, where you get advice on a constructive dismissal case. I took him for a constructive dismissal case, left, and then that's when I set up all my businesses. I'd already got the property business going, and I was already helping people with weight loss and maybe addiction, more like sugar addiction than weight loss. Sugar addiction that might help them lose weight. And I left that day, and that's when everything started to change for me. I actually got sober not long after that. So that was in 2020 when the lockdowns were on. I actually quit drinking as well that time. So it was a big turning point for me, that was getting out. And it had been coming for a long time. But yeah, the whole story really is about me making that stupid decision to go in with these guys. Well, it was with one guy really, and start taking this money. All the shame that I felt through that. Can I blame alcohol? No, it's just another symptom of being totally lost, very sort of immature, not streetwise in that sense. And just like over those years, over most of my life, from my teens to my mid-40s, the amount of mistakes I made is just incredible. But that's one of the biggest ones. But it was also a really big turning point for me. Thanks for listening.